So after the chicken crossed the road to visit the idiot, knock, knock.
Who's there?
The chicken.
Oh.
Yes, I'm so glad I didn't say this.
Oh. Walked right into it. You did, Alex. Adam.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Again.
It was predictable that it was going to be me, wasn't it? Let's be honest.
So, good morning, good afternoon, and good day wherever you are. Welcome to another edition of the Digital Download. Today, that's right. It is the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live.
Woo.
Today, we're talking about how to be a next level leader, a conscious leader. We have a special guest, fingers crossed. There she is. Ruth Farenga will help guide us. Ruth, welcome. I'm going to bring you on in just a moment. But before we bring Ruth on, let's go around and introduce the panel. And while we're doing that, why don't you in the audience reach out to a friend, ping them, and have them join us. We strive to make the Digital Download an interactive experience, so audience participation is highly encouraged. Right. So, introductions. Adam, would you kick us off?
I would love to. You can see who I am. My name is down there. I'm co-founder.
They can't see that on the audio replay.
Sorry. I'm Adam Gray, co-founder of DLA Ignite. And I'm delighted to be here with my fellow panelists and our special guest today. This is a fascinating topic we're going to be talking about.
Yes.
Indeed, it is.
Alex.
Good afternoon, all. Alex Abbott, founder of Sapiro, sometimes known as the bearded sales guy. And I am a very proud partner of DLA Ignite. Very pleased to be here.
Excellent. Thank you. Tracy.
Hello, everyone. Good morning from where I am. I am Tracy Borison, founder of TLB Coaching and Events. I have a small head cold, so I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but I can hear it in my voice. So I may talk less today than other days, but I'm excited to hear what Ruth has to say about conscious leadership. And I, too, am a proud partner of DLA Ignite.
Excellent. Thank you. And Tim.
Thank you, Rob. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm looking forward to talking to and learning from Ruth today.
Very much so. Thank you. And I'm Rob Durant, founder of Flywheel Results, and I am a proud DLA Ignite partner. As I said, this week on the Digital Download, we'll speak with Ruth Farenga, a leadership development professional and host of the Conscious Leader podcast. So let's bring her on. Hey, welcome. Ruth, good afternoon and welcome.
Hi, how are you doing?
Doing well, thanks.
Very well.
Please tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got here.
Sure. Yeah, so my background's in corporate. So I worked with Intel Corporation, Pearson Education, and I found in corporate I got quite stressed, to be honest. And first of all, I picked up mindfulness for myself, so mindfulness training. And then I went on to become a mindfulness teacher alongside my corporate work with no plan of how to work in it professionally. I just was doing it because I felt like the real deal in terms of my mental health. And then I did a short job in the third sector, which I didn't like at all. It was all politics and awfulness. So I left and picked up a career coach, and then I started developing my a mindfulness business at first. And I was teaching the public and also people in organizations. But I found with teaching people mindfulness in organizations, it's a bit of a band-aid for what is really needed, because you might be teaching people how to listen, how to be really more considerate, more still. And if they're not seeing that role model from the top, that creates a kind of dissonance that means they're like, I might want to get out of here. So it's not great ROI for a company all the time. So I realized this work needed to start at the top. So I retrained as a professional coach. I started doing leadership training programs, producing them with my mentor. And yeah, then I went on to start the podcast because my research showed that leaders love learning from other leaders. So I find the best people leaders I can, and then I hack into their brain about what's working or what's gone wrong, so people can learn from their philosophy and culture. Yeah, and finally, then I pulled together their top traits and behaviors into this book, Next Level Leadership: 9 Lessons from Conscious Leaders, which is really the top elements I see common among those leaders and what makes a great successful leader in today's world. So that's a whistle stop tour. I think that's helpful.
Fantastic.
Excellent. Thank you. So let's start there then. What do you mean by a next level leader, a conscious leader?
So really, consciousness is about awareness. So it means you're aware of your own actions and how they affect others. And at a kind of sort of functions at a very sort of micro level and then a macro level. So I always say this is about 3 layers of development: self, interrelation, wider culture. So a conscious leader will start by recognizing that this starts with myself. So my own reactivity, my own habits, my own productivity, the way I manage my mood and the influence I have on others. This is the first layer. And then beyond that, how I interrelate. How do I listen to each other? How do I coach people? So I'm not fixing their problems, I'm helping them think better for themselves. And then beyond that, the wider culture, like what do we want it to feel like around here? What's a commercially successful business that is a fantastic place to work, that feels fun, productive, high performing, whatever the words are that we want to create. So they're really, I think conscious leaders really think about those 3 layers of self, interrelation, and wider culture.
And you mentioned commercially successful. Isn't this really just woo-woo feel-good stuff we're talking about? I mean, where does commercially successful fit in?
I know you're probing me here.
Oh, most definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
you put a volleyball up, I'm going to spike it down.
I'm gonna get it, yeah. Yeah, well, when we think about the modern workforce is demanding. It demands good people. It demands people who are emotionally intelligent. And if you don't create an organization where you have good interrelation between people, good culture, people will leave, and retention will be really poor. And I work with a lot of tech companies, and retaining good talent is some of the biggest drain on them, and biggest cost factor. So I think some leaders can think you get into this stuff and you're going to go a bit soft around the edges. I don't think so. I think it's going to make you way more focused about what really matters. A lot of leaders stay busy. They stay in the technical, they stay in the detail, when really they're forgetting that their main role, especially as the more senior they become, is the people stuff. It's going to be about helping people show up as best they can at work, in order to be successful, in order to retain those people. People leave. Was it Gallup said that 75% of people leave their job not because the position itself, but because of their manager.
And Ruth, in terms of this, like, I am with you. I believe that there is commercial value in the people things, but do you feel like in like our historic definition of leadership, because you said it's kind of their job to manage the people, not to manage the details. In my experience of leadership, I would say that that's not necessarily true, that it doesn't seem to be the narrative that now that you are a leader, your job is the people and it's not the things. I have a friend who recently got promoted into a leadership position, and she has 10 direct reports, one of who is on long-term disability that she can't replace because they're on long-term disability and she works for the government, and that's a whole thing. And she still has to do the same job she was doing before. So there really isn't even if you wanted to be a conscious leader, there's not really the time created for that in the structure of leadership. So how do you see the structure, historic or nowadays, contributing or not contributing to our capacity to become a conscious leader.
So she's picked up a leadership role of 10 reports and
Yes.
she's got to do her existing job. Okay,
Yes.
so she has no space to lead,
No.
really. Yeah, that's
Absolutely
challenging. You know, she's going to somehow have to figure out how to delegate like at least 50% of what she's doing in order to have that space. But yeah, she's not settling that up. And I think it's common, you're right, that a lot of people get promoted through their own skill success. They're really good at their technical aspect and they're promoted and maybe just given on extra responsibilities. But we have to allow time for this. I don't think there's any way getting around this, that we need space. People need to feel our strong intention. They need to feel we care. They need us to connect personally on some level. Not everyone wants to be very close or very open. That's okay. But if we have no space, there's not a chance to really succeed. That's tough.
So
We have some great comments from the audience already. Rob Turrell says, is this more like tough love, Wendy Rhodes Billions style?
I don't know about Billions, to be honest. I haven't seen it, but tough love, as a leadership approach, tough love.
I think that was coming in more when we were talking about the coaching and woo-woo versus commercially successful.
Right.
So I wonder how. So it strikes me that this is a fantastic vision for an organization to have. You know, we put the people first. The leaders lead. You know, they're walking into battle carrying the flag, and they've got their hand behind them to pull everybody into battle with them. And that's a lovely mental image to have. But the reality is, like Tracy's friend, you know, people get promoted internally. I haven't got anybody to replace you with that's as good as you. Therefore, you need to keep doing that job, and you're taking on both the management and the pastoral care of the people that are in your charge. And it strikes me that you know, nobody ever puts their hand up and says, "Well, I've got loads of time. I can do more stuff." Everybody is busy or thinks they're busy, and there will be casualties, won't there? You know, if I'm loading you up with another full-time job on top of your full-time job, and it's all very well to say, well, you know, happy organizations where people really believe in their leader perform 20% better, but actually that doesn't help me make my number today. And I think that you know, there's the difference between the vision and that abstract picture of where we're heading and that beautiful sunny uplands that we're walking towards, and the reality of where I am today and the struggles that I have selling things or managing clients or struggling with a product that isn't working properly or an integration that isn't there, and all of those issues. So how do we balance these two? Because we know that the long-term thing is really important, but actually the short-term thing is, if I don't sell something this week, we're going out of business.
And I think this is very much about bringing the team into the conversation around this. So if you're stretched as a team, we need to collectively own that problem, be it the stress that the leader is under, the volume of workload. What has to go? If there is not time to do everything, what needs to stop, and how do we innovate around what needs to be done? Because maybe there's loads of better ways that we can be doing things. Maybe there's lots of time we could be saving. And some of the most simple ways of doing that involve structured listening, where you take time. You can feel like it's too slow because we're really busy, right? But let's say we go around and we have a problem about workload, and we go around and we listen to the 10 for 2 to 3 minutes each. We take half an hour of listening about how we solve this problem about workload without interrupting each other, without any kind of crosstalk whatsoever. So everyone is there to come up with ideas about how we deal with the workload issue. And what you'll find in those 2 to 3 minutes of thinking each, because people get that whole nice big space to do that, people will come up with loads of ways that they can support things. But quite often they're not empowered to help each other before. They just head down like, let's plow on with my own things. So we need to create environments where we're of co-support and of like really hearing each other, even if that's just for 30 minutes around a specific problem rather than being head down. But I'm not underestimating the challenge.
And it wasn't a challenge. It wasn't a challenge of you. It's more stating a challenge that lots of people have. You know, it's like it's all well and good to say, everybody needs to take a little bit of me time. So I'll take 30 minutes during the middle of the day, and I'm going to go and sit out in a field and have my smoothie and watch the birds fly, and that'll help improve my mental health, which of course it will. The problem is that I've then come back into an office with 30 minutes of additional work that I've got to do by the end of the day. And I think that the modern workplace is potentially so stressful and fast-paced that actually every minute of your day is being utilized. And to try to carve out even 5 minutes can be difficult for people. Constant barrage of emails and messages across social and meetings they have to go to, that there's no time to actually do any work, the stuff they're being paid for.
We need to really scrutinize meetings, because
absolutely
people are in so many meetings, and also always on email. If I'm always checking my email, I'm always going to be in doing mode. I need to better be doing that 2-3 times a day. Otherwise I'm literally always going to be at the mercy of what everyone else wants me to do, rather than.
But is this this is a culture thing, I think, right? Because I've worked in organizations where we actually had training on effective meetings, right? And it was this is how we're going to implement effective meetings here. And the training was great. And then people just didn't implement it because that wasn't the culture. That wasn't how the business did business. It's not how we got through our day-to-days. And so from a conscious leadership perspective, if we're talking about a cultural transformation of an organization, where's a good crux point to kick this off from? Or does it just really have to be the high level leadership team being okay, we see this, but then they have to become conscious leaders themselves? I'm trying to figure out what's the chicken and the egg that we can.
Yeah, and I think most people are conscious. It's just they've never had a moment to realize that they actually all want to be happy and successful and kind and all these things, but they've never taken time. So even as simple as, say I did an away day with a group of leaders, I'll always take a briefing call first with them where I'm hearing about what they want. And beneath the kind of stress and all that, there is a real desire to be collaborative, happy, reduce stress, this type of thing. And the other thing that you can do is take time where you involve the wider company or a cross section of people in the company, and you get the leaders to take their leadership hat off and be one of us, be one of everyone. And then together we work on ways to have a more effective workplace, a clearer vision, because quite often we're busy, but we might be busy doing the wrong things. So
It's sort of
need to empower people to come up with their own solutions.
Listening to you talking there, Ruth, I'm thinking of situational leadership, and a leader being knowing what style is required at which moment. But Adam, to your point, I was starting to think about in terms of a leader being busy, going off for their Zen moment, improving their mental health, but then having more work to do, and how that sits with leading by example versus inspirational leadership, where you might have to lead by example because someone needs the support. However, if you've had to take yourself away to support your mental health and have a think about a problem that needs solving or the next step the team needs to take, how do you inspire the team to then take that step? And if those situational leadership, leading by example, and inspirational leadership, are they all types of leadership that are required, or is there should it be conscious leadership?
And the firefighting thing, if you're firefighting for more than a week or two at a time, something's got to change, because I don't know about you, but I have some of my best ideas when I'm on a walk or in the shower, or something where the space has been created.
And then, if I don't make a note of what that idea was, it's gone.
Yeah.
I keep thinking I need to have a whiteboard right outside my shower. So get all the good ideas down.
Well, in the shower, or they would kind of wash off.
Yeah, I thought of that too, but then I'm I feel like the water might just wipe it away.
Yeah.
Ruth, have you seen challenges with leaders who consider themselves conscious, but maybe they're not quite as self-aware as they would need to be in order for them to actually practice conscious leadership? Because this is something I have experienced, is that there's people, especially when you use the words growth minded, they think that they're growth minded, but then as soon as they're put into a growth situation, they're like, oh, hard no. They're like, okay, maybe there's some more self-awareness you could explore there.
Yeah, it's very common with something like listening. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, I'm really good at listening. And I mean, I've been working on listening for the last 12 years. I'm still working on it. You know, it's still really important to cultivate. Yeah, I think you can get a lack of awareness sometimes. It really depends. It depends. Most people, I feel like there is a more ordinary, you know, someone mentioned like a more heroic type of leadership or visionary. This is becoming a little like done. Like people are kind of fed up with this heroism. All they want is an ordinary person who's going to say something like, oh, sometimes I have imposter syndrome, or I struggle with fear ahead of a presentation, or the board meeting that's coming up, that because they need to relate as a human being. Yeah, it's important.
We have some great comments coming through. I'll share a few of them. First, Chris Gunn says, is emotional intelligence better for the COVID experience? Ruth, do you have any observations there?
Yeah, I'm going to answer is how I think the question is phrased. So is emotional intelligence better since COVID?
I would think that's
what I would say.
Yeah, there's a mix. I mean, I'm sure you guys have got loads of comments on this too. There was this really weird thing in COVID where some big exec had like grand pianos behind them, didn't they? And like giant gold leaf things, and then someone struggling at home with like 2 children, and they're like looking at their exec like, oh my God, your house is so enormous, and this I'm struggling with here. So there were some moments where there was a real lack of awareness. But some people have really had to share more about their families and real life, because that's just been there. So I think there has been a certain removing of the mask. But then we've got this whole like remote working, in-person working thing where we swung to remote working because we had to, and everyone said we couldn't. And then suddenly everything still worked when we're all remote. And then a lot of companies are coming back hard on in-person working, and it's like all that empathy has suddenly in certain companies disappeared, and the person saying, well, I'd quite like to do the school run 3 times a week and I can still do a work a bit late and I'll do this, that sometimes goes out the window back to a very productive. So I think, yes, in general, I think we are better for it. We've seen more of each other's personal life, but it's interesting how that's springing back to a more contracted control style in some.
Isn't it interesting that one of the companies that has forced people to come back to work recently is Zoom, the very company that
I didn't know that, actually. It really,
which I just think is hilarious and ironic, and it's not exactly living the brand, is it?
No.
Yeah.
Well, and I wonder from a sorry everybody, I can't talk today. From a conscious leader perspective, was it like we got a sneak peek into what it's like to create space for this like empathy and listening, and then that's a little uncomfortable, so let's just retract back to the way we did it before because we're familiar with that?
Yeah, I think that is really well put, actually. I think this is like a dance, and sometimes I notice clients will come in and they'll do some work together and then they need to pull back, but then they might come in again. Because when we are talking about empathy and we're listening and we're in this, it still can feel a little bit like there's not enough structure. So it is tempting to be like, well, let's just pack it all back in the box and go back to the spreadsheet. Yeah.
And how important is it to like treat it like a dance? Because consciousness is like a pretty ethereal term, right? Like there's times where we're more conscious and there's times when we're less conscious, and that's just part of the human experience. So like when you work with your clients, Ruth, is the dance kind of built in, assuming that as we learn to become more conscious, we are going to have those moments where that's super uncomfortable. So it's reasonable for us to want to retreat back to our safety zone.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to make this really practical, like in a one-to-one coaching session, you want people to go on like a dip curve where we explore something. Was this really about? Oh, actually, it's something about my personal life and something I've struggled through for many years, and blah blah blah. And then up the other side into like, how do I practically take this into my life? And some people they need to start shallow, so they need to talk very high level, not really letting you in too much, and then slowly you'll go more deep. But then sometimes they might need to pull back and they feel like they've shared or something. So share too much. Most people you'll build the trust and it will grow and grow and they let you in more and more. But others will, just there's a safety in not sharing anything and having control over a conversation, a coaching conversation. You are in control of the session. You can decide where it goes, but you're not in control of like your feelings maybe or what comes up. So that is a new space, particularly if people haven't grown up with parents that have encouraged them to be able to be vulnerable or to be allowed things to be not okay. That is harder and does need a bit of dance to explore it properly.
Especially when there's so many redundancies, that trust element is challenged between employee and manager or leader.
Yeah.
This dance feels a bit one-sided to me.
Is it that there's two reasons why people are saying go back to the office? The first one, it's men saying it. I've not seen any woman say let's go back to the office. And the second is that they own office space.
Okay.
Yes,
actually,
and as a bank, if they don't get people in their office space, they're going to be bust.
Tim, you brought up something that I was playing with whether or not I was going to bring up, is that I feel like from the female perspective, because we are invited more often into our emotions and into connection and into trust relationships, that it might actually be easier for women to move into conscious leadership than it is for men, because they have this more, like, I have a 5-year-old son right now, and I'm noticing already the like societal standards that he's being sold on, not by me, but by society. And I wonder if that makes it more difficult, and we still have more men in leadership. And so is this like a self-fulfilling prophecy?
I mean, I saw someone yesterday on LinkedIn. It was a man beating his chest, said, if you don't come back to the office, you're losing deals, which is such a blackmail-y thing to say to people. And really, do you mean if I can't go on the school run 3 times a week and still not win deals? Come on.
What was that stat your daughter shared, Adam? There are more.
Oh yes, she was very pleased that the number of female CEOs of Fortune 1000 companies has now overtaken the number of CEOs named John.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, the male clearly we're talking about sort of masculine and feminine styles here, but there is, I think women have had traditionally had a much wider amount of things to think about in life and different caring responsibilities. So thinking of the broader picture and everybody's emotions is a more feminine, I won't say female, but is more feminine trait. And really we are asking men to learn more feminine traits. And that can feel a bit like, is that really cool? It's like, yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like superpower of a man.
We've been sold on all the masculine traits for years from a leadership perspective. And I do think that this is more like when I think of conscious leadership, it's more about a balancing, right? Because there's masculine energy, which is the like get up and go and do things and performance. And there's the feminine energy that's like, let's collaborate, let's listen, because to be fully effective, we actually need both of these things. It's not one or the other.
We do. And I think the recognition that the job of a leader, particularly in large organizations, the job of the leader is to inspire people to be their best selves. And if you've ever read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, where he analyzed the behaviors of Andrew Carnegie, the steel magnate, and all of his friendship group. And Andrew Carnegie said, I know nothing about the manufacture, the mining, the distribution, and the marketing of steel, but I lead a team that know everything about the mining, the manufacturing. And he said, my job is to let the people around me be the best they can possibly be. And that's what's made us so successful as a business. And I think that often we lose sight of that, don't we? Leaders, through the 80s, I guess, leaders became very prescriptive and very, you said, Ruth, about chest beating and, this is what you need to do. And actually that has kind of stuck for many times. And even many women leaders are, and you use the word feminine rather than women, many female leaders are in fact very masculine in these leadership traits, and they become like the very worst of power-hungry men.
Yeah. Sorry, Karen.
I was going to say, there's a comment from Bob Britton says the job of a manager is to manage themselves out of a job. Grow your teams to the point where they are so autonomous that you, as a manager, become redundant.
Yeah.
That is something I've always been taught, and that is scary. Until you realize you cannot advance until somebody can come in behind you and take over for what you're doing now. And I think Andrew's comment just prior to that. Do companies provide the correct path to allow new leaders to transition from worker, in his case, the frontline worker, because we were talking about earlier how we had somebody who was promoted to a leadership role, but still responsible for all of their frontline duties as well. Do companies generally provide that correct path for that transition?
No.
There's a mix, I would say. Some do, some really recognize the space that's needed. I mean, 10 reports on its own sounds like a lot of reports.
Yeah, it is.
I talked to somebody once who said they had 150 direct reports. And I was like, this. But so when we're talking about structure, like that's not,
150
you can't, right? Like, what's the name of that like magic number of like, you can only have 150 people like within your consciousness. So you can't effectively lead and or manage 150 people. It's not a thing. So I think like from a structure perspective, these are the types of things we need to look at to say like, are we empowering these people? And have we just taken, because I think our hierarchical, I can never say it. You know what I'm talking about. The hierarchy of the business is something that I think breaks leadership, because if the goal is to move up the hierarchy and you move up the hierarchy based on performance in your last job, but leadership isn't the same as just being a specialist at a thing, and then we don't provide training for our leaders, then the whole structure is actually broken.
Yeah. And I think at the root of this, and that, going back to the point about putting yourself out of job, or what Adam was saying about the leader that was really like non-egoic, like not egotistical at all, it really requires a really strength of self-esteem. And that's what I talk about in the book at the beginning, is a lot of our issues in the workplace around gossip and bullying and manipulation, all of this, it comes down to stuff we've had in the playground and our upbringing where our self-esteem is low. So we then take it out on other people, and then we feel like we need to keep all our responsibilities. Whereas the more we can strengthen our own capacity to be okay with who we are, the more we can then facilitate others. That we don't need to prove ourselves anymore to ourselves.
I agree with Bob Britton's comment that you can lead 150 people, but you can't manage 150 people. Because there's a difference between leadership and management. It's something that we debated a lot when I was in corporate, about whether something was leadership or management. Good comment, Bob. Thanks.
Yeah, because you can lead a country,
right?
But you can't manage all of the people who are doing all of the things.
Yeah.
Well, Dale's comment's interesting. Sorry, Rob.
Dr. Dale Childs says the key is personalization. Typically is a dangerous statement. Everyone is different. It's about tailoring your style to maximize desired effects.
Well, everybody responds better to something when they feel it's talking directly to them rather than to people who look like them.
Yeah.
Well, and something that I've noticed is there's like a vibe, right? So we don't all look the same on this call. There's lots of things that we have in common. But we don't all have to look the same to vibe the same. And this is something that I've found really interesting in the conversation because I can't remember who it was, but someone asked if we could share some examples of leaders that inspire you, Mike. And like one of my best leaders was a white male. But what I always appreciate about him and continue to appreciate about him today is that he looks for the like spark within people. So when he's responsible for managing an individual, he looks for a spark. And he was the first person who saw a spark of leadership in me. And he gave me an opportunity to lead. So I was 26 and he gave me an opportunity to lead. I was working for a direct marketing company and he gave me an opportunity to lead the account managers. And he gave me an out. So he was like, I see leadership potential in you. If you're interested, let's try it. Let's give you this small team to lead, right? I think there were 4 of us. So then I was kind of the team lead. So I was leading 3 people. And I'll show you things and coach you. And if you like it, after 6 months, we'll continue on that trajectory. And if you don't like it, you can go back to your account management job because you're a really good account manager. And he didn't promote me to leadership because I was a good account manager. He promoted me to leadership because he saw leadership potential in me. And I think that's a big difference in like, how do we progress people? But then it's also like I've had employees who want to go into leadership because they think that's the trajectory of jobs. And I had a marketing coordinator who was like the most amazing marketing specialist. And she wanted to move up into the management. So I gave her some management types of things to try. And she didn't like it. She couldn't get behind it. And I was like, that was the moment for me where I'm like, this whole structure is broken. Because it doesn't make sense that this person can't be an amazing specialist for their entire career and move up in terms of income and all of these things, because I actually need her to do that. I don't need her to lead the people because I'm here and I'm good at leading the people. So we don't need both of those things. And I think, I could go on an entire rant about job descriptions, which I won't do. But it's kind of back to the structure thing. I think that a lot of the structure that's broken. And maybe it takes a conscious leader to look at that and reassess.
Yeah, I think being able to promote people, in especially like technical roles where people are fantastic developers, but maybe aren't best or people skill people, but should be able to go on that technical track to specialism at high levels. That is, we don't need loads of leaders, and we maybe glorify it too much that makes people think that this is the only way. So I think you're right about rethinking structures. I think that's very healthy.
I think also it's quite difficult if organizations already have an embedded culture. So Tim and I were fortunate enough a while ago to be invited to a little do that Gary Vee was hosting. And we got to speak to him afterwards. And he is an individual that, love him or hate him, and I was very surprised when I met him in person, that he is the most gentle of souls. And his team would all follow him into battle to storm a gun emplacement because they genuinely love this man. And although he swears a lot and it seems like, you just got to get on and do it. And he's very hyper kind of energetic when he's talking about the actions people need to take. When I spoke to one of his team and I said, I bet if people don't make their number, they're out the door. And she was like, no, if they don't make their number, he spends an inordinate amount of personal time with them trying to get them up to standard. And he cries at the fact that these people are not enjoying their experience of working within his company. And I think that is a rarity. And he's possibly only able to do that because he's created a business in his own image. You know, he's funky and young. The business is funky and young, and trying to change some of those staid organizations. So we had somebody making the comment about the McKinsey perceived wisdom. You know, you can't imagine that working in a company like McKinsey, can you? You can't imagine the leader in McKinsey sitting down with one of his staff and crying and giving them a hug and saying, "Come on, it'll be all right."
That'd show a sign of weakness, Adam.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Show vulnerability, Adam.
Yeah, well, we don't have that in this business.
No. We'll soon beat it out of you.
So I know someone who's in sales, and they don't aspire to be the best salesperson, but they do aspire to move into leadership. What advice could you give someone that's sort of, you know, at that stage of their career, fairly early on?
Oh, great question. I would encourage them to work on themselves as a project. If they're not already doing that, they might already, because they might be interested in this type of thing. So to read around any kind of self-development things that chime for them, to focus on their own presence and listening more than ever, and really cultivate the ability to be, not do. You know, most of us are quite good at doing. Some of us need productivity training. That's another live session for us to talk about. But most of us lack the ability to be really present and to hold the emotions of other people. But we can practice this stuff. And I hear quite a lot of managers like, I don't want to be their therapist. You know, they don't want to. It's like, well, you're not their therapist, but you are there for them as a whole human being to some extent, which means you need to better hold some stuff. Doesn't mean you need to fix it. Doesn't mean you need to go and help them solve all their problems. But you do need to be like, wow, you've got this going on, that going on, this going on, that going. Well, no wonder you're having a hard day. Let's see, unpick, and maybe if you're having a really stressful time, we'll take a few things away, let you recover, and then we can give them back to you. How does that sound? And someone probably will just leave that meeting like, phew, thank goodness. Now I can think. Now work is not a stress on top of my personal stuff.
And I would also say, Alex, I know that you're a football fan. You can think of a whole load of football managers who were brilliant, who weren't good footballers. I'm sure the audience could rattle off a few, but there are many that you don't have to be good at football to be an ace football man.
Like Tony Adams. Yeah, anyone's an Arsenal fan? Maybe not.
Clearly not.
Yeah.
I'm like getting none of the references today.
I'm not an Arsenal fan, but I know he was he struggled in management.
He struggled as a footballer, though, didn't he?
It's a good defender.
I wanted to share Donald. I'm going to try Mbetcha's comment. The stats especially state that most organizations have senior leaders from a specific background.
Yeah.
How do leaders create a structure and culture of difference for senior leaders?
It's a great comment,
especially in the UK.
Yeah, diversity of thought. How do we encourage that? It's so easy to hire and listen to people in our own image, isn't it?
And from particular schools.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
One of the conscious leaders that I interviewed actually said that she has now a personal board of different people. Now, she used to have the people that she took advice from, or she realized they were all a similar age. So she's a CEO, very successful young female CEO, and she noticed that a lot of the other women in her group were also white, about 35 or so. So she then set about creating different types of people who would influence her. So we need leaders to start doing that, but also to welcome. Diversity is hidden sometimes. It's sometimes diversity of opinions and ideas. So we need to get better at listening to different perspectives, and not seeing it as like an affront on our business model. Not to management by committee that we go around the houses for 1,000 years, but we develop listening structures where we welcome different approaches and we try and pilot different things to see if we can do things differently. A lot of innovation, if given the opportunity, can happen around the edge of an organization. And then they're doing it really well. And another group goes, oh, wow, what they're doing is fantastic. But they need permission to have a go at this.
Doesn't this stem from the confidence of the leadership, though, because one of the things that I've experienced a number of times at points during my career has been I've had a manager that wasn't confident, and consequently, what you find is that praise doesn't percolate down, but criticism does. Ideas are stolen and subsequently stop coming as a result of that. And there's no desire to champion fresh ideas and fresh ways of doing things.
You've worked for some really toxic organisations, haven't you, Andy?
I have, yeah. But they haven't all been like that. I've had some great managers.
You just remember the bad ones, don't you?
So, you do, and I've been fortunate enough that within the same organisation, I had simultaneously one of the best experiences of being managed and one of the worst experiences of being managed, and it threw one through the other into sharp relief, and it was interesting wondering how those two kind of approaches could coexist within the same organisation, which was quite small.
I actually wonder, Adam, if confidence and consciousness are related, because I think when you are self-aware as a leader or as a person in general, what you realize is that you have strengths and you have weaknesses. And it's not about being afraid of my weaknesses. It's about using my team to populate my weak points. And in so doing, I'm not so concerned about my image as the leader, pretend that I can know and do and be all things, but I can know and do and be me, and the team is meant to fill all the gaps. And therefore that allows me the space to be more confident, because I'm not constantly thinking about what I'm lacking. I'm thinking about what I have, and then the team is thinking about what they have, and they also get to see that, like, hey, I need you to fill that gap, because that's not what I can do. I need you for that. And it allows, I think it creates more, the consciousness creates space, I think, for confidence to build.
And I think to Ruth's point as well, Tracy, confident in just you being you.
Yeah.
And so that you can then accept your weaknesses and know who can fill them around you. Yeah.
The hardest thing for a leader is to try and step into a new role without needing you to prove yourself to everyone.
Yeah.
And like earn this respect. And so that's a lot of pressure. It's hard.
But I think people do accept it a lot more these days, that when you are human and show vulnerability and show that you're human, it builds a stronger relationship between you. When you're trying to be something you're not, it's usually quite obvious.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, Ruth, how much of that comes from like that narrative of I have to prove myself? How much of that comes at us externally? Because I know some of it does, but how much comes from us internally? And that's actually our narrative that we created, that I have to prove myself instead of something someone told me.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's back to upbringing. A lot of people, were praised for achievement. And that creates a thing where we have to achieve in order to get to be loved, things like that. So, it's, and also how is the leader being led? Are they being told, you've got this, I can't, this is going to be really good, but you don't have to prove yourself. You're ready already. Take your time. Or are they being like, you need to batch up in a certain amount of time. This team needs forming. If you don't, then, there's consequences. Like, what is the energy going around between the leadership? Because I know a lot of leaders, maybe you do, that are literally having to be a buffer from above because there's a lot of toxicity coming down, and they're like, I'm going to make a great environment for my team, but what's coming from above is not great. So I'm getting support from elsewhere, from peers, from mentors, in order to defend my team from.
Yeah, one of the best bits of advice I ever got was that as a manager, my job was basically to put an umbrella up and to stop the shit coming down from above. And part of my job was to work out which shit I could basically throw away, because they would never come back and ask for that spreadsheet to be, the answers of that spreadsheet to be filled, and which ones would actually, and anyway. But
It's
that
just
was
a shame, isn't it? It's a shame, you know.
it is a big shame when
Not a
you're
waste of energy, but yeah, it's
when
maybe
you're working in an organization and you're basically going, no. But it's true. You're working in an organization where shit's coming down. Your job is to basically try and stop it. Hitting your team.
There was one episode where we described it as fighting dragons.
Yeah. The dragon
I obviously didn't get that memo, Tracy. I'll call it Fighting Dragons next time, okay?
I'm just like, I can't remember. It was another like kind of personal development leadership episode that we did.
Us Brits always use umbrellas because we get so much rain.
Yeah.
The umbrellas.
I had an experience where like literally, because I brought it up, I felt like I was keeping my team safe on a tropical island, and I was running around the outside of it fighting dragons. And it's not sustainable whatsoever.
Yeah. There's a couple of episodes actually we've done where Tracy has left us with exceptionally memorable things.
She's a storyteller.
Yeah.
I think in visualizations.
Like,
Alex,
do you remember the thing?
Alex, just do the thing. Yeah, just do the thing. If you want to get the thing, you've got to do the thing.
Yeah.
So today's do the thing, everyone, is be a conscious leader.
Yeah.
So Ruth, on that point, like if there's individuals out here who are like, okay, I think maybe I'm a conscious leader, but maybe there's some more work I can do in the arena. What are some great resources that they can check out?
So resources to help them.
Yeah, move along your journey to be a more conscious leader.
For example, Ruth.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, in the book as well, I reference other books. I think directness is a really great skill for leaders to learn. Many of you may know the book Radical Candor by Kim Scott, who talks about how we be. I mean, the amount of companies that do not have direct conversations very well with each other, I think, is an issue. But that's on the doing side. That's in the like how we tackle things. I think the biggest thing a leader can do is learn to be still and present, which means things like mindfulness. Now, some people think mindfulness is fluffy and like, you know, it's goo goo gaga stuff. But the mindfulness I've learned is been run by Oxford University, and it's the neuroscience behind it is solid. And we're learning to watch our emotions rise and fall, like watch the wave of reactivity. So mindfulness is not about sitting quietly somewhere so that everything feels really perfect. You might have calm experiences in meditation. You might have difficult ones. What you're learning to do is sit with the experience, however it is, however it comes, and be able to ride those waves. Because this is where we get the kind of self-regulation, self-control, kind of peace with what's happening. Uncertainty, problems in business, difficult leaders, employers, blah, 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 market conditions will always be coming at us. So this is where we need to develop a kind of steadiness in ourselves as best we can, that we can face that. And a stillness and confidence. We've mentioned confidence today. It's a really good point. Confidence that I am whole as I am already. I come into this whole, and then others will feel our sense of wholeness, and that we don't need their like affirmation to be okay.
On that point, Ruth, on that point, do you think leaders should reschedule a meeting when they're not feeling whole?
I mean, I think maybe sounds like you're answering that question already. Yeah, what a good idea. If you're, especially if you know this is going to be a difficult one.
Yeah.
You're not coming into this, you think I might be a bit reactive here. I'm not sure if I'm in the best place. Or if you could say, I'm not in the best place today. Can we keep this short and tackle some of the things next week? Yeah. Really admitting where you're at, or letting your team know as best you can. I think it's really healthy.
Yeah.
I can envision where the meeting never takes place. Where the leader says, I'm not feeling my best today, we're going to reschedule. And then someone else who's supposed to attend another day says, no, today I'm out. And it goes round and round until it never takes place at all.
I mean, how
you
important
need
is
to sometimes push
you know?
through and acknowledge that maybe I'm not in the right space, but still need the work to get done.
Depends what it is, doesn't it? If you're about to land some really difficult feedback, like the day you're feeling really scattered may not be the time. But of course, we can all put on the best face we can. But how much is that? How full is our cup by the time we get into it? And
I think I think in business, there's a lot of false sense of urgency. So like, we need to have this meeting now. And if you get caught into that repetitive thing, maybe it wasn't a meeting that needed to be had anyway. But I also have an example where, so I was working on this project with a couple of other people, and we had a weekly project update meeting, and we needed to do the weekly project update meeting to like move the project forward. 5 minutes before one of our project update meetings, I found out that my father-in-law passed away. And I was like in a state where I was like, I don't even know how I feel about this, right? I'm going to go to this meeting because it's the last meeting I have today. And I'm just going to go and do the meeting. And then one of my peers asked me, how am I doing? And I was honest with them. I was like, I actually don't know. This happened. Like, I'm in shock. I haven't processed it yet. So I don't know that if I'm sad, but like, I don't know. I'm in a like weird, I don't know place. And we had 30 minutes scheduled for the meeting. My 2 teammates invested, I call it an investment, 20 minutes in me to let me explore how I was feeling right at that moment. And then we had a very productive 10 minutes of project meeting, which is really all we needed. We only needed 10 minutes for the project management piece. So I think that when we allow ourselves to have that flexibility and to say, like, if we invest, again, like I like to call it an investment in people. If we invest in our people and our team for 20 minutes, does that not mean that we can't accomplish what we came here to do? Because yeah, we need to accomplish the thing, but when everyone's in the right mindset to accomplish the thing, we accomplish things faster. I think everybody knows that. So I just thought it was really meaningful to me and a really great example of how we can create space for people to be people and hold them and also accomplish the things we need to accomplish.
What great generosity to give you that space. And like you said, it set you all in the right place to be like, right, bish, bash, bosh, how do we get that stuff done? Fantastic example of conscious leadership. Yeah.
Ruth, you've got a podcast, you've got a book, you've got a TED Talk. How can people learn more about you? How can people get in touch with you?
So consciousleaders.org.uk is the best place to find all about conscious leaders and myself. The TED Talk is called Tapping into the Leadership Superpower. And it's all about, it starts off with a football example, actually. So if you're intrigued, you can listen if you like soccer or football. But it's all about the intention we bring, how we're showing up. And the book pulls together all the lessons from the podcast for these top traits and behaviors with lots of, it's told through the stories of the leaders I interview. So it's very practical. If you like practical and you like, oh, this is how you did it, and then you did this, and then you said that, as well as the theory, the global research that backs it up, then next level leadership, 9 lessons from conscious leaders will help you do that too.
Fantastic.
Cool.
Thank you very much. And to our panelists, thank you. To our audience members, great questions, great comments. Thank you very much. This has been yet another edition of the Digital Download. If you have something to say, if you would like to be a guest on the show, please reach out to us at the digitaldownload.live. You can scan the QR code on screen to fill in the Be Our Guest. Ruth, on behalf of myself and the other panelists, thank you again for a fantastic conversation. It was so great to meet you here and learn more about what you have to say. Another fantastic episode. To everyone else,
thank you, Ruth.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth. That was great.
Thank you.
And we will see you here next week.
Bye.